Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 13 from The Next Perfect Step, where all possibilities lie in conversation. I am absolutely thrilled to have two wonderful guests on tonight. And Lori, I'll let you do the introductions.
I'm very thrilled to introduce Leeson and Krystal Arbogast, who are part of the Big Brothers Big Sisters organization, and they're going to tell their story today. I did an interview with them last year, and listening to it today brought me to tears. So their story is just a story of passing on the torch of love. And I'm so excited to talk to them again. And well, welcome, Laura and Krystal. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You have a beautiful story spanning 30 years. And we'd love to talk about maybe the Big Brother, Big Sister program, and then how you met and what it meant to you, because that is part of the story that was really incredible, that's spanning all these years. So why don't you start at the beginning?
Well, do you want me to start and then
Sure, Laura. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Well, it goes back to after I had gotten married and we moved out to Marblehead, and I didn't really, know many people in town, and I didn't have, a full-time job at the time. And so I had a little time on my hands. And I'd always known about the Big Brother, Big Sister program. But I thought if I really wanted to give back, I had been volunteering on the Hawk hotline, which is a help for abused women and children, a great organization in Salem, Mass. And I really enjoyed that. But I wanted to be more face-to-face with somebody and have more of a face-to-face relationship, not just help counseling, people on the phone. And I wanted more. I wanted more of a relationship. And so I reached out to the Big Brother, Big Sister Association, and I filled out an application, and a few weeks, about a month, maybe 3 or 4 weeks later, I got a call from Big Brother, Big Sister that they had a little sister. She was 12 at the time. And I'm like, oh my gosh, okay. And I got those little butterflies, those nervous butterflies. I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, this is going to be, this is going to be real. And so that's really how it started, is how I met Krystal, was through, reaching out to the Big Brother Association. And I had no idea, where our relationship was going to go. But when I think back on it, all I can say is I just have such gratitude for, when we give of ourselves, you have no idea what you get back in return.
Great. That's so true. That's so true. Krystal, what do you remember about meeting Laura?
Oh, yes. Well, I wasn't aware of the program that, 12 years old, obviously not. But I was raised by my grandmother, and I was going through a really rough time in my life at that time. And she put in an application for me, and she didn't tell me anything about it until the day that everything was organized, where I was going to meet Laura. And I just remember her showing up, and it just kind of like that moment, like, okay. And I'm a very friendly person, so we hit it off easily in the beginning. Laura's very friendly as well, and for me, it was something that was different, something I desperately needed at that time. So, and the more and more I got connected with Laura, the more I was really appreciative of the program and the opportunity that it provided me, as being an to me. She had some positivity and really opened my eyes to what was out there that I couldn't see. I couldn't get past the little bubble that I was born into and trying to fight my way through it. And Laura was a huge blessing for me.
So
Right.
I remember our first meeting was that you did I come to your house or you came to my house? I'm trying to remember, but it doesn't matter. You ended up our first
You picked me up. You
yeah,
picked me up at my grandmother's house.
that's right. And I
Yeah.
brought you back to my house. And I wasn't, just sort of the getting to know you, icebreaker. We hung out in my
Right when we
kitchen
made pasta.
and we made pasta because I had a pasta machine. And
Yes.
so I thought, well, okay, cooking, I know how to cook. That's one thing I know how to do. And I was, so nervous, right, to, doing something totally new out of my comfort zone like this. But, we eased into our relationship, I think quite naturally. And I think one of the things out of so many, that I learned was that I always was trying to entertain you in some way. I'm like, okay, I've got to think of something to do next week and the week after. And, I have to show her the theater and I've got to take her to all these places. And, what was so life affirming that you had told me, years later, I didn't really know until our relationship developed, is that your most favorite times, out of all the things that I did with you, was just hanging out in my kit, just hanging and just talking.
Just being together. Absolutely.
So that was a big aha, and a big life lesson, that I've taken with me, that I've also learned in my business. And it's like, okay, I remember this with Krystal. You are just enough, right? You don't have to jump through hoops and try to prove something or entertain people or come up with all of these fancy things. You just have to be present. And that's one thing that I have taken away from this experience, that you can just be present and be with somebody and not have to make up anything at all.
Yes, and it's very true. I remember the first day going to your house, going to Marblehead. Just that alone, or maybe a 20-minute drive. It's not far at all, but it was like a whole different world for me. Giving what I was being raised, in what I was experiencing as a kid was very different from what I was seeing in Laura's life, but that helped me because it opened my eyes to the possibilities that there were other ways of living and there were other types of homes and families and relationships, and so that gave me hope. And I remember going to see my first ballet with Laura, and the museums. I remember all the different outings, but absolutely my most favorite thing was just spending time together, talking, and she would always just check in on me, see how I was doing with the different aspects that I was coping with, and the changes in my family, and it was always interesting for me to learn about her and see her in her world in her kitchen. She was always making something, whether it was a smoothie or pasta or a sandwich, for heaven's sakes. I mean, it was different for me because I wasn't used to that. And it really opened my eyes. And I remember I was 14, so we had a relationship for a couple of years at this point. I was 14 when I finally came to a realization in my own personal life and my journey early on, that the things that I was experiencing through Laura, I wanted those things for myself. And I didn't want to follow the path that I was currently on at that time. And so I took kind of like the aftermath of what I've already had done and tried to like just, do my best with it. And I do give credit and I've always given credit to Laura for that, because she was an excellent role model for me and still is.
Well, it wasn't, I sometimes didn't know what to say. Sometimes the things that, that you did, or, the decisions that you made, I didn't always understand. And so I just tried to support you and guide you instead of trying to, say, well, I wouldn't have done that, or, um, because I think as an adult, when you think of a mentor, I think I had in my mind, I'm like, well, I'm supposed to protect her, and that was another big realization that I had, is that you can't protect people from things. You have to just do your best to ask them questions and to support them. And that was really hard for me. I mean, you had your children, really, really early. And what was really interesting was that Krystal and I had our kids basically at the same time.
Yeah.
And we were, pregnant at the same time.
Yeah.
And you had decided to start a family very young. And, I was like, wow, I could, in my mind, it's like, well, I can't protect her from that. And I didn't understand it. But then as our relationship went on, it really bonded us, because then we were mothers, and we had, as we grew up, Krystal became more of an adult. Our relationship, was different, because she was growing so quickly. I mean, when I first met her, she was 12, almost turning 13. And, our kids basically grew up together. And we have this other amazing layer of our relationship, is that Krystal's grandmother, Mary Ellen, who was the one who reached out to Big Brother, Big Sister, was a house cleaner. And you had said, well, my grandma would come and help you with your house if you needed it. And I said, yeah, I do.
Always a saleswoman.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I do need help. And so this other layer was Mary Ellen, who was raising Krystal, also, joined our family life, because I wasn't pregnant at the time, but I successively, became pregnant. And Mary Ellen started, house cleaning for us. And so we had this, sort of a triangle, this three-way, relationship. And so that was just a really neat layer for us too.
It was like you could get together and meld your families together, and just all the relationships between all of you. It was nice.
Well, Krystal had her, own relationship with her grandmother, and I had my relationship with her grandmother. And, sometimes the stories didn't always sync up.
Yeah, they weren't the same.
They weren't the same. And I'm just like, okay, that's interesting, so we didn't always view things the same way, but it helped me understand both of you better, from that perspective.
I would say that I think that was a big part of the dynamic of our relationship, because I think you had more insight than maybe anybody else would have had during that time. And whether you never preached at me, which was really helpful for me, because as a teenager, I was trying my best to find myself in the midst of my circumstances, and going against, I think, what a lot of normal people were doing at that time, because I wanted to strive forth and I wanted to make my own way, and I was going to be successful in my own way. And so you were very supportive of that, even though at times I'm sure you were like, what are you doing, or why are you making these choices in your life? But I knew that I had somebody that was in my corner that I knew would listen to me, would hear me out, and just be in the midst of that with me. And that for me was huge. because I wasn't having that anywhere else. So the power of just being present, just being there for somebody is life-changing.
That's
You
so
also, one thing I'd really admired about you, Krystal, was your faith. I thought that is really what carried you through. A lot of this is you had a very strong faith, and whatever that is for anybody, right? Whether it's a spirit, God, whatever that is for somebody. I think that you always had that to go to as well, because you had to make some really tough decisions. I mean, it was hard for you. You had when your kids got a little bit older, it wasn't easy. I mean, you well, even before they got older, when they were young, you'd tell about the going to Guatemala, because you were quite young when you did that.
I was, yeah. So just a little bit of my backstory. I was a very young teen mom. I was 14 when I had my first son. And I was in high school, and I was told to go to an alternative school, and I didn't want to. I didn't want to give up on myself. And so I pushed forward with my education. And then when I was in college, I was studying liberal arts and psychology. And my professor started talking to me about sociology and different opportunities. And that sparked my interest. I started helping a gentleman with his nonprofit that he ended up taking me on my first missionary trip when I was 23. And it was a 2-week trip. Just changed my perspective on life, in addition to other changes I had already had. And I think it was 3 months later after that trip, I ended up moving to Guatemala with my 3 children. And I was there for 10 years as a missionary. I would work with youth, trying to mimic, right, what was given to me. I wanted to be able to be that for someone. And so I was a teacher, I was a youth pastor, I coordinated medical missions, and I just wanted to make myself available as a resource for other people in whatever way that I could based off of my skill set. And it was wonderful, it was beautiful. Many people would come and stay at our house for the missionary trips. I had over 75 youth that would come to my house every week for mentorship and youth activities. So that was my way of giving back with what was sown into me. And so it was very meaningful for me. And I wanted that example for my kids too. I wanted them to see that growing up and not some of the things that I saw.
So Krystal, go back a little bit to high school, because I think that was a really pivotal moment for you, when you first got pregnant with Jonathan, and you were in high school, and the school principal tried to put you in a program, and you were listening about the program, you were open to it until
something happened.
Right, until he told you, you asked what you said, tell me more about it. And then
so I'll tell a story. So I was a month into my high school, I was in 9th grade when I had my son. So we did a little home tutoring in the beginning, and then went back into school. But when I went into school, my principal, I think he was coming from a concerned perspective, and we had developed a relationship because he was my principal in middle school. So when he came to me, I knew he was coming to me with the right heart. But he came and he was like, Krystal, we know that you're a mom now, you have a son, you have additional responsibilities. There's a program that we have, it's called Second Chance. And we would like you to go to that program, because as a teen mother, I think it would be a better fit for you. And I was listening, but the name of the program offended me. And I was like, why is it called Second Chance? I haven't given up on my first chance yet. Just because I had a child doesn't mean I gave up on my first chance. And so that's how it registered in my mind, and it offended me. And only because of the name, I did not go. And I asked the principal, I said, well, are you expelling me? And he was like, no, we can't expel you for having a child, but you're really not the best example. And that like hit hard for me. And so I was like, okay. I was like, well, if you can't expel me and I can stay, tell me what I need to do so that I'm good. And he was like, well, your attendance, and we understand with a child, you'll have times where perhaps you can't come in. You have to keep up with your schoolwork, your grades, so on and so forth. And I just made that decision that that's what I was going to do. And so I declined the offer to go to the alternative school, and I explained to him why. And then I ended up being his office assistant after that. So I would do my courses, my classwork, and then when I would have my free periods, I would go down to the main office to, you know, whatever task he had, and that helped our relationship further. So fast forward that's how I started my 9th grade. When I was 16, I had my daughter. So before I was even done with high school, I had 2 kids. And then the senior year, I was nominated by the school to be their state representative, which to me was a huge honor, especially given my past experiences that I was having. And so I participated in a program called Jobs for Bay State Grads. And I did my first speaking engagement. I remember it was like 500 people downtown Boston, but it was very exciting for me. And I was really proud of myself. And I was the first one to graduate high school in my family in 4 generations. And, you know, I did it with 2 children by that time. And then from there, I took a year off and I went into college, and, you know, I just really wanted to be the best version that I could be, and not just a mere consequence of the things that I was born into.
That's amazing, Krystal. That shows how much spirit and heart and that you have, and how much love in your heart. Can you tell us how your children now are, how that's affected them watching your example?
Yeah. Yes. So my kids had kind of like 2 sides to every story. So depending on the topic of conversation, sometimes they'll be like, Ma, you moved us, and you know, we went to different schools and we had people in our house all the time because I had a lot of the missionary stuff going on. So I raised them as missionary children, and I wanted them to be exposed so that they were aware of different lifestyles as well, and they can make their choices for themselves. So that's something that benefits them hugely now, especially in their careers. And then my example as being a young mom to them, again, 2 sides to every story. You know, sometime my son, he was like, Ma, I wish you were older when you would have had me. I'm like, yeah, I can understand that. But I wasn't. That was my, you know, that's when I had you. And I, you know, and I made sure that I did everything I could to be a good mom and a good example to you. So my son has a fun relationship with me because he's competitive with me. We don't have like the normal mother-child relationship, I guess, because we're actually pretty close in age. You know, he's turning 30 this month. It's hard for me to even sometimes accept that I have a 30-year-old son. I'm only 44. And so we have this fun relationship where we're pretty competitive on our education, our successes, and, you know, how we're giving back and how we're helping, because those were the values that were really important for me to install in them. So it's fun to see, you know, and he's involved in helping organizations. My daughter that lives here in Georgia, we both work for a company that help people start up nonprofits. And then my youngest daughter's in the military. So it's been interesting to see how each of them have developed and the values and attributes that were exposed to them, how I see them use that in their daily life now.
And Krystal,
And they all know Laura and the whole family, so that's always a fun getting together. Anytime we talk about her, I could just say, "Oh, you know my big sister," and they're like, "Yep, they know exactly who I'm talking about."
I remember when we had a very sort of defining moment, because when you would come back from whether it was Guatemala or wherever you were traveling to, we would meet. And
Yes.
I remembered you were really, as an adult, you were an adult and you were really struggling because your kids were now grown, they were growing, and you felt that pull that you wanted to leave the state and leave Massachusetts, and they didn't want to go with you. And I know that listening to you at that time, it was, I felt that angst, because I was, as a mother too, I wasn't judging it at all. I was just, my heart went out to you for that, because I know that must have been a very difficult decision for you to leave.
Yeah, I think it was one of the most difficult ones I made. His family is a hot topic for me. It's very important, and unity is really important to me. And so my children, they were all grown. They were back home in Boston, and I was still dealing and healing with a lot of the trauma that I lived through back home. And so it was psychologically difficult for me to be there for more than about 3 days, because I would have too many things that would trigger things, and I would have to work through it. And so I made the decision that it was better for my mental health to have some separation from the place where I'm triggered. But that meant I had to move away from my kids. And even though they were grown, but I want that close relationship. And I was afraid that if I moved away and I wasn't where they were, that our relationship would change and wouldn't be the same, and that I would miss out on important moments in their lives and their kids' lives, which part of that is part of it. That's the downfall of living, in a different state or a different country from your family. But luckily today we have so many different medias where we can stay connected. So it definitely helps. And I'm a big traveler, so I travel there all the time.
Laura, you're a mom of 2 boys. Do you have any thoughts about what we've been talking about?
Well, I just want to go back a little. I think one of the most profound things Laura said is to realize that we are enough, just us, just being
Yes.
us. We don't need all the frills and stuff. I mean, I think that was just so profound when I heard you say that. And something we all need to realize, all the activities and the things we do as kids and do for our kids and stuff like that. Even with my 2 boys, I wanted all of these vacations to be fantastic and them to have the best time ever. And as my boys are older now, 19 and 24, the stuff that I hear them thinking back to and remembering are some of the small things that I didn't even plan or spend thousands of dollars on. And so that was just, I think we need to all realize that it's sometimes just sitting with somebody, having the conversation, that you yourself just being there is enough, is exactly what somebody needs. I think that was just such a beautiful part of your story. And not having to have all the answers. I think when Laura said that, realizing that, when you think of yourself as a mentor or you're supporting somebody else, even not just a child, but a friend or anything, you want to have the answers for them, right? You want to help them. And sometimes the best way is just being there, allowing them to find the answers for themselves. That was amazing to be able to learn that and figure that out, right? We always want to have the answers for everybody, but sometimes just asking the right questions so that they're the ones who get to find the answer for themselves and do it for themselves is just amazing. The other part of the story was that, you opened your heart and it rippled to Krystal, and then she went on this amazing journey and helped so many others. And all it took was Laura to do something out of her comfort zone. And she ended up causing this humongous ripple effect that I couldn't even tell you how many people you guys' lives have probably touched because of that. Because Laura got out of her comfort zone. I mean, that's just, your stories are amazing, and I can't thank you enough for sharing them. And to Krystal, I mean, to never let the principals or anyone define you or tell you who you were or what your options were, that you were strong enough to know what you wanted to do and you accomplished it. I mean, kudos to you. Thank you for sharing that. Never let anyone define you or tell you that you've missed out on your chance. There was no second chance. You were absolutely right. You never gave up on yourself. And I think that that's just truly amazing.
Yes, definitely. Thank you, Lori. That was
Thank you. Thank you so much.
right on.
And, you know,
And if you don't, go ahead, Laura.
I was just saying, I, you know, always revelations when, you know, I do this talk, because when we had that talk at Panera that day, and you said that you were struggling and leaving, I actually didn't really know the real reason, the deep reason why you were leaving. I just learned that tonight, just with you talking, because I didn't understand the real reasons. And I didn't sometimes just want to go there and dig that, you know, you had to let this flow out on your own time.
Yeah, I think oftentimes for anyone who is interested in becoming a mentor, especially to, a young kid, I think, and this is even coming from me being a mentor myself, I sponsor a young girl from Guatemala. She actually lives here with me. And, sometimes I may not know the extent of her circumstances, like what Laura was sharing with my life. But I think the power of a mentorship is not knowing or not even having the answers. It's being present and just allowing that person that's in need to know that they can count on you. Because usually when we're going through life and we have our tough moments, it's usually because oftentimes other people have not been there for us in the way that we need it. So allowing ourselves to do that for someone else really helps. For me, I struggled all these years going back home. So I'll pop, like even still today, I'll pop in for a few days and then I hop right back out. I don't stay too long, even though I've had a lot of healing in my life, but nonetheless, the majority of the strong traumas I lived through were there. And so there's constant reminders. And I think part of owning one's mental health, if we can talk about the topic here, but I think it's an important topic to cover. You need to know yourself and you need to know what your triggers are and set those healthy boundaries so that you're not forgetting and avoiding it fully, but know to what extent you can be around something that will trigger those past experiences for you and then know how to move on from it.
That's a healthy attitude for sure. And I think what we're all been talking about is being present, without judgment with someone and just being there and just sitting with that person sometimes just is so meaningful and powerful. Just sharing the space together.
Absolutely.
And letting them know that you understand and you care, and that's what they need, someone to listen to them and care. Yeah,
exactly. I believe in the journey that we're on in life. I think we all find our own answers. We have different routes to find those answers, but I do believe the more people that we have that are supportive of us, it does enable us to find our answers quicker.
and now you're a mentor. Flame on with passing on the torch. Beautiful. What advice would you give to people that are listening today to our conversation? Either one of you or Lori?
Well, I think on my end, the advice that I give to people, when you're around others, show that you care by being present, right? Put your phone down, put other distractions away, just be present, even if it's only for a few minutes, just to hear that person out. But hearing somebody else can help them find the truth that they're looking for, can save their lives, because you don't know what's going on in their mind and their heart. And you can provide direction. Sometimes we provide direction to people without knowing it, just by sharing something that we went through, and that other person will take it and ponder on it. And so my biggest advice is, know who you have in your inner circle, choose wisely, and be present.
Beautiful. Thank you. How about you, Laura?
Well, the lessons that I've learned from my relationship with Krystal carry me through all the time. I think back on it. I don't know. I think just don't be a know-it-all. Think when you think you're right all the time, it cuts you off from relationships with people. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I've learned. Just be patient with people, and they come around. And I think we both of us have been, a bit vulnerable. I think, when you became vulnerable, I became vulnerable, and that's the way relationships work. They don't work if you think you know it all and are not vulnerable to your own story and sharing that.
I agree with that. I think there's beauty in the midst of how vulnerable we can be with others, because that's life. That's the truth of life. You don't have to have the answers. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to care.
Yeah, that's what I think I would say, is to not be afraid that just a smile or a conversation, or not to be afraid to give that compliment to someone, for us to be, human to each other, to be compassionate to one another. You never know how that's going to the ripple effect that's going to cause, just by that one thing. When you might be afraid that the compliment might not sound sincere, or whatever's holding you back from saying that compliment, that one act of kindness could cause a huge ripple effect. And to never be afraid to be vulnerable and to do it anyway.
Absolutely.
And I'm amazed at the ripple effect, as everyone has said, about just Laura stepping out of her comfort zone and wanting to connect with Krystal. And you did, and you have this 30-year relationship with your kids, knowing each other and your families, and then Krystal becoming a mentor and passing it forward. And who knows how many lives you've touched and how many lives they'll touch. It's just so beautiful. What a beautiful story. Yeah, thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
The story's not over. It just keeps unfolding.
That is true.
We're always reinventing ourselves, and you're not afraid. You're, maybe it's part stubbornness, but you keep reinventing yourself. And I've always admired that about you. You can pivot and go, keep working at it. And I love that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I think that's more of a survival skill that I've acquired over the years. But I remember, I don't know, probably 13, 14 years old. I realized how stubborn I was. What I was just saying, and I realized, okay, I'm a really determined person. I need to make sure I'm using this for something that's positive, because if not, it would not be beneficial to others or to myself. And so I tried my best to follow Laura's lead in a lot of things that I did. And then I just threw myself out into, I'm not afraid of taking risks. So I'll throw myself into things that I think will have a good effect, and hence the ripple effect, like you guys say. There are kids, just a side note, there are kids that are now adults that were part of the program I had, that they've started their own nonprofit organizations. And it's beautiful, because my goal, and I'm sure it's like yours, Laura, and anybody else who does mentorship, you would like to have a deep effect in somebody that produces positive long range results. And so, like, my goal is, my legacy in life, I want it to be a legacy of love. And if I can have that flown down to other people and to other generations, and be things that will result of that once we're long gone, then I think we're golden.
Perfect. A legacy of love.
Good way to end.
So can you share with us how, if someone's interested in becoming a part of Big Brothers and Big Sisters, how do they reach out and become a part of that great organization?
Yeah, they can just call. There's a Big Brother, Big Sister in Boston. And then based on where you live, your zip code of where you live, they'll connect you with the right outlet of different Big Sister, Big Brother around the country, around the state, wherever it is that you live. So their outreach is huge. And there's never enough people to mentor. I mean, there's a lot of kids that need to be mentored. So there's tons of need out there. And it's a year commitment. I mean, once our commitment was over, I'm like, well, I don't want to end this, just after a year. So we can, you can continue. The formality of the program ends, but that doesn't mean your relationship has to.
And 30 years later, here you are.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for your story. It's such an inspiration to me and to everyone that's going to be able to hear your story. Thank you for sharing. What a legacy of love, Krystal.
Thank you.
It was an absolutely beautiful, beautiful story of courage, kindness, support, and love. And I can't thank you, ladies, enough for sharing it with us.
Thank you for the opportunity to allow us to share it. It's very meaningful for both of us.
We'd like to hear from our listeners. If you have any questions or stories of your own, we'd love to have you share. And thank you for listening to The Next Perfect Step. And we look forward to our next episode. Thank you for joining us, Krystal and Laura and Lori. Thanks for being here.
Until next time, thank you.